So picture this. It's 3 a.m., you're deep in your YouTube rabbit hole watching your 47th video about how ancient Egyptians might have built the pyramids. And suddenly you realize you've got work in 4 hours. We've all been there. With creators like Greg Eisenberg and Cody Schneider dropping golden nuggets of wisdom multiple times a week, keeping up feels impossible. And let's be real, most of us have jobs, families, and lives. But I still have massive FOMO, and I don't want to fall behind on all the latest AI gems. So I did what any reasonable AI nerd would do. I automated the whole thing. In this video, I'm going to show you how I built a personalized YouTube digest system that scrapes my favorite channels, uses AI to summarize the key points and deliver a digest so I can decide whether to watch the full video or just get the highlights. And the best part? It's with no code. So you don't have to be a coding genius to learn how to do this either. Let's dive in. So this actually started because of a post that Greg Eisenberg did where midway through he said, make sure to bookmark these things. And I responded that I'm already doing that because I scrape his channel both on Twitter and on YouTube. Now today we're just going to go on YouTube, but apparently there were some people that were interested in this. So we are going to get make.com because we are going to connect a bunch of different tools together so that you can create this digest. This is a low-code platform that I just absolutely love to build really cool automations that leverage AI. So you can actually get started on Make for free. And then as you start using it more, all you have to pay is $9 a month, and then you keep going up as you start using it. So it's a pretty good model. You can do the same thing and then some more technical systems like N8N. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to have it flow through from YouTube as we're watching to see any new episodes that are posted. That'll then go through, be put into a Google Sheet as our database. And then we will be watching for those new additions. And if we don't want to transcribe all of those and decide, oh, we want to transcribe this one and maybe not this one. So we have that ability to have the human in the loop in that process. Then we're going to scrape and get those transcripts. And then we will parse those transcripts so that they are readable because they come out ugly. And then once we have our transcript, we will then use AI to summarize, pull out the key points, and then add it to another document. From this document, you can then send it via email, text, or however you want to consume it. And of course, your summary is only going to be as good as your prompt. So let's get into the weeds here. So how do we do this? Rather than recreating the whole thing from scratch, I'll walk you through each module step by step to give you some terminology if you're not familiar yet with make.com. What we're seeing here, this whole workflow is called a scenario. Each of these little circles is called a module. And this little mini circle here is basically the trigger. This is the thing that's going to start the workflow to happen. That could be on a time frequency or when you decide to do it. So right now I have it on demand. I have to basically say run this, but you can set it to every day, every week, or any sort of customized time that you want it to run. And so they have a built-in video watching system or module here, whereby you find the channel ID. So what we would do is we would go over here, and you can always just look in Perplexity, or if you still use Google to always find these little tools, because you'll find for free a lot of tools that help you out. So for instance, if you go to Greg's page, this is sort of a cosmetic ID. And so you need to actually find the user ID. So you go over to this little thing that's free, and we'll put it in the CAPTCHA. Oh, I failed the CAPTCHA. Not human. All right, then we get the ID. I already got this, but basically we just copy and paste this. Then you would enter it in here, which we already have. Then you can decide when you want to get the videos for. So if you don't want to get all of his videos, or you only want to get certain ones, you can start before it was published, after, so you can change basically the interval of time. We will do it from published before today. So today is the 16th. And then we'll have it published after. Maybe we'll do from November, and then you can put a limit. So as we're getting started with building these out, I would always start with a limit, because if you accidentally have like infinite, or you have 500, then if you make a mistake or it doesn't come out exactly what you want, then your operations will get eaten up in Make. And what that means is in make.com, they basically price based on these things called ops. And that's essentially the number of times it runs, and each of those little modules takes up an operation, which you'll see once we run it. And so it's usage based. So if you overly use it and abuse it, you can end up running up a pretty hefty bill if you're not paying attention. And so I don't like to waste them. And so I put in 5 at least to start. And then once we get it going, we can continue to do that. Now, if you don't want to have just YouTube, or you don't want to have one channel, another mechanism that I've done is actually done from a full channel and playlist. So you can do Greg Eisenberg's channel, you can do it by search and a keyword, or you can do it by a playlist, which I have a couple different playlists that I organize them in. So then you can also categorize them better too as you're perusing through. So that's another way to do it. And we'll just, so you can see what that looks like and how it's slightly different. You would basically go into your playlist. Let's do scrape. Let's do view full playlist. And then you can see the ID up there that you would grab and put in there. So we won't do that for right now. We'll just do still with Greg's video, but that's how you would do that. Let's say you have a bunch of different sources. You can use this other really cool tool called RSS app. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is basically an RSS feed that you can find a bunch of different feeds, whether it is from YouTube, if it's from Twitter, if it's from news sources. You basically can aggregate a whole bunch of different stuff. And so as you can see, I have, whether it's keyword searches or otherwise blogs, all coming in. And then what you would do is you would go back to Make, and you would add in RSS app, watch the items. So again, you would set a schedule. You would get this URL, plop it in there, and then also say if you didn't want to get 1,000 items, you just want 1. Again, for testing purposes, you do 1, but that way you can manage the consumption of those operations. So that's probably, I would recommend the best, because then you can get more funneling in at once. But sometimes it is better to get all this data, because you get some metadata that's different from the RSS app. What I have happening next is I have to set the variables. What I found, for whatever reason, when I have stuff populating from YouTube or really a lot of different sources, before I put it into Google Sheets, it's better to do it in a variable, because that allows you to change up different tools, and you have to do less mapping down the road. And so what mapping means is basically you're taking certain information and you're putting it somewhere specific. And in this case, it's Google Sheets. And then, so all I've done here is I've named what each of these things is. I could call it something else. I could just call it ID. I could call it video, whatever. It doesn't really matter, just something you know. And then I put in the value. And so you can see here that I'm getting lots of information that came from this module. So this is the video ID from an example, a sample video that then would go into here. And then I basically map each of these variables so I know what information is being stored where. So I go through and do the channel ID, title, channel title name, the time it was published at, and the description. You don't have to include everything. You can include whatever information you want that does come in from that module. And then I run sleep. So sleep basically says, pause what you're doing. Let's hang on a second, hang a beat, because sometimes this stuff just goes boom, 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 and it overwhelms the system. Or sometimes Google says, hey there, I know you're doing some automations, like please don't, you're overwhelming things, or I know you're a bot. So for Google Sheets, I always do sleep. For other tools, you don't always need to do that, but also just a very good practice. Otherwise you'll get like errored out sometimes. You won't know why. And it's because if you add in a sleep module that helps basically say is wait, I have 10 seconds between every time you get that information, you'll be okay. So then what I have over here in Google Sheets is basically I had to first make a connection. You would go add, and then all you have to do is name it whatever you want. And then you go into sign in, and you would sign in automatically with whatever Google account you have. And then it will show up here the connection name. Sometimes you have to reauthorize and re-verify those connections for security reasons. For instance, yesterday I had malware on my computer, so I had to disconnect and then reauthorize all of my different connections that I had to make for security reasons. Everything's good now. But that happens, and then sometimes Make will just disconnect things randomly or there's a change. So if you don't know why something's working, usually it does give you that error, but that might be why. Then select a method by path. So this is basically saying I'm going to use this to help populate and figure out where the file and folder is. And you can do My Drive, Shared Drive, or a Google Shared Drive. And in this case, it's going to be My Drive. And so what it allows you to do is then find what you're looking for. So in this case, it's my digest for the demo. And then you would go here and it'll show your files. So it connects to your Google account, to your Google Drive, and it will populate everything here, which is very nice. And then you select the spreadsheet. You then select the sheet. So I have the sheet name of sheet 1. Great. All right, and if it contains headers, mine does. So as you can see over here, we've already got our headers set up. Then you say, what values do you want to populate in here? So hypothetically, you could say the variables from here, but again, because I'm using best practices, I'm having it come from where I set those variables. It doesn't matter as much here. Sometimes, again, it errors out for various reasons when you try to pass info directly. I don't exactly know why, but it just does. And so I have, again, the data that I passed from here, from the YouTube module over to the variable that I set, and then I map it in here like so. So pretty straightforward. And then if you don't want something populated in a column, you just leave it blank. Usually what I would also do is I would run each of these modules individually just to test piece by piece to make sure everything's working as we go, because it would be horrible if you build this whole thing out and then all of a sudden something doesn't work and you're trying to figure out what went wrong, why, and then you've wasted a whole bunch of operations in the process. And so also if you want to run a module individually, you can go run this module individually. However, if it does require data, like for instance this, it does require data. So I would have to actually manually put in some kind of sample data to see how it runs. And so for this one, also note that when you run this, you can decide from when it runs, but once you run it, it'll say, okay, I've already pulled things from November. So I'm not going to then, because I'm a watch module, I'm not going to go back and rewatch everything from November. So it basically will do it from the last point in time that it pulled. So it has some level of smartness to it, but that gets annoying for testing if you want to retest things and rerun this. So the trick for that is basically choose where to start. And then you can go from now on, since a specific date, or pull all. And so we're going to actually do from a specific date. Even though we had actually set that, you can basically override what we had set by putting it here. And so we'll do that. And so we're going to run this and see what happens. So as you can see in this sheet, there's currently nothing. And now we're going to run it and there will be something in just a moment. So this little bubble means that it worked. And then you can see here's all the data that it pulled. And each of these little bundles is the data set. So this is from each video. So this is from one video, a different video, a third video, so on and so forth. And you can expand and see what's in there. And then if you ever needed to, for whatever reason, see what the output is, if you wanted to download this, there are certain reasons you would do that at various points in time. You can also do that there. So we're letting it run. And as you can see, it's slowing down over here to run through, but it's already ran 4 of the operations. And you can see it's setting all the data here. And so we're going to go over here and see, it did that. And actually it ignored this row because there was already data. And so it's creating a new row as it goes. So it skipped that, but now you can see that it's adding in here the text I had inputted manually, and then it's pulling all of the other data individually that's unique per video. All right, there we go. Cody Schneider. Great episode, by the way. So now we have our little database going of what we want. Now we actually need to get the transcript from the video. So what I've done in a separate scenario is I'll have decide, okay, am I going to just transcribe it? And I'll put an X, yes, no. So we can even test this out. So that way, again, if you're using make.com, you're not abusing your operations and you're just getting things in a timely manner. But again, hypothetically, you could get really crazy and custom on this and decide, I only want these on Tuesday and these ones on Thursday, and you can set all of that up if you wanted. Okay. We are now going to trigger a new scenario. So we have our Google Sheets searching for, in transcribe, if I said, yes, I want this. If you wanted this just to be automatic, you would either add it to the end of here, or you would have a watch new rows. There's also watch changes to specific cells. So if you're only updating a specific cell, you could watch for that, because sometimes you're just updating things, but you're not making a whole new row. So that's really helpful. But any watch function is what you should be using to basically trigger that. So you could have basically multiple things happening. You could reuse some of these for different purposes. So it is good to sort of chunk things up into different pieces, and then rather than having like one super massive workflow. And one other thing I didn't mention here is ignore. So if you do get an error, it'll actually stop everything, so it won't proceed. So let's say on the third video, I had an error, it would just stop. It wouldn't go to 4 or 5, it would just stop. And then it would say what the error is. Sometimes you have to sort of figure it out, and I highly recommend using Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity to help figure out what that error is as you're investigating. Or you can just put ignore, and it will continue, and it will catch all the errors over here, so then you can figure out what is happening over here, but you can still have the whole workflow running. Because sometimes if you forget edge cases or certain data, like it'll just happen. You'll get errors. And that's okay. Everything is solvable. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go and retrieve that information that we had populated into our Google spreadsheet. I do have a human in the loop in this process, but technically you could easily just have it go straight to the summary. I do this when I have a large playlist rather than just a channel that I'm scraping, and I'm doing a lot more than once a week, or maybe the creator has a lot more videos that I want to scrape. In this case, like, I will not want to get transcripts for every single video. So I wanted to show you how you do that, because you can always add a human in the loop in this process and easily select things. This helps in so many different scenarios, whether it's looking through edits before they're published, emails before they're sent, any of these kinds of automations, you will want human in the loop, and it's pretty easy to do. So in the spreadsheet, you would have an X, which I've set up in this column, and that will be passed along within this scenario. Once we get that information, we will then set some variables that we will use later on in our API call, and then we will sleep for a second, because again, these items are best practice. You could hypothetically skip these 2 steps and have it go right in here, but sometimes it will cause an error. So this is just preventing errors before they happen. Then what we're going to do is we are going to go and call an API. So for those of you that might not be familiar with what an API is, it's basically the way that 2 systems will talk and pass data back and forth. So it's basically sending information and passing it back and forth. If you're publishing something, you would be posting that information and sending that information to another system. So you have a bunch of different mechanisms that you can do that. But essentially, all of these different modules are APIs. They are just being wrapped up nicely with the makeup so that it's easier for the user to use. However, not every API on the internet or in any software tool will have something nicely integrated into make.com. And so that's why we're having to use this HTTP request. This is super useful also if you're going to scrape websites. This is basically the tool you would use to do that. You put in the URL and just go and get all the data. Once we've got the transcript, then it's always not going to come out nice and pretty or the way we like it. And so what we have to do is format it, or get rid of the brackets or sort of remnants of code, if you will. Or again, it'll just send a bunch of information that we really didn't need. And so you need to then parse out that information and say, I just want X, Y, and Z thing. So that's what we're doing here. Then we will create a document where we will just dump all of the transcripts as is into document. So we have that for our records. I also do this where I put it into a large Google spreadsheet, or you can use something like Airtable, which is better for lots of data, and a bunch of other reasons why I just love Airtable. But for simplicity, most of you probably use Google Sheets, so we'll use that. Or again, you can just create a document. If you wanted to have it all in the same document as a running digest, the thing to consider is that document is going to get pretty big pretty fast. The second thing
is that you need to be able to reference that data layer. So you need to probably also add in a title or some other way to know what transcript is what. So you'll probably just have to title a section and then being able to query and reference that later is not always the easiest thing. So I would just set yourself up for success and either do a whole separate document that you can easily reference or put it into a database and spreadsheet like Google Sheets. Now, again, the couple of things about Google Sheets is if you do that, there are character limits per cell. And so if you're doing transcripts, you actually have to cut up the transcript if it's over 30 minutes typically, sometimes more, sometimes less, just depending on how much language they get into that 30 minutes and put it into multiple cells. So for now, we're just going to do a new document that's created here. That's the raw transcript. Then we're going to summarize it. That's the whole point of this. And so we're going to finally use some AI. Notice how we have not used any AI. This is just basically automations. And now finally, we're using AI to summarize the key nuggets, and we will identify what information we want in the summary and then pop it into another document. So we will both have the raw transcript and we will have a summary. And in the summary, what's going to come out is only as good as your prompt. Prompt engineering is a real thing. So the better your prompts, the better your output.
Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is go to RapidAPI, and we're going to want to get, once you've logged in, you're going to come here. We're going to want to find YouTube transcribe. Now, sometimes when you search these differently, it'll show up differently. Play around with the search and keywords like transcript versus transcribe will show up slightly different. So anyhow, so we're actually going to use this one down here. I like this one. Also note, some of them will have things that populate differently, meaning they will produce data with certain syntax that's nicer looking versus others. So it's good to test it out and try. And the way you can do that is you would subscribe to the test. You would go here. We're going to do for free for now. And then you can, over here, just test the endpoint. So press the button. And okay, so it comes out nicely versus it's not going to be beautiful until you actually set it up to convert. So here, it just only has this. Sometimes it'll have by line all of this, or it'll have subtitles and a bunch of other things that you have to extract the information you actually want. And so there's a lot more formatting and therefore steps involved. So it's good to just check out a few to see which ones look good to begin with. So then there's less work to do on the other side of it. But sometimes there's information that certain ones give you and they don't. So just shop around, play around, test it out. Now we go back to code snippets. We're going to see this is our main key that we're going to use for our variable that we're going to set. And then we're going to need, basically, this is the information. Now don't get concerned. This is code, but it's going to be simple stuff. All you're going to be doing is copy and pasting. So as we see here, there's the method of get. So we're going to be going to get information from YouTube. So hence the API being a get request. And then this is basically references. Here's the URL and the two headers that you're going to need. So first we're going to need the key because we're setting this as our variable to pass. So we're going to copy this, go back over here, pop it in here, and I'll delete this in a moment. Okay, and we're going to put the variable name in here, and then we're going to say rapid API key. Now again, this is always helpful to set the variable so that later we can reference this information later on. It's just really good practice because sometimes if you take steps, especially you don't have visibility into everything, you might have to come back and do this because data won't be passed after certain modules depending upon how you set them up. So don't worry about that for now, but I'm doing this because this is best practice. We have our sleep module, and then we are going to go and set up this info. So we're going to redo this. All right, so let's copy and paste this. This is the URL reference. So we're going to go over here, and as you can see over here, it says video ID. All of these we're going to have, whenever you use this, just note that you're going to always need to have a unique reference unless you're only doing one item. And so you have to identify, is there the video ID that it's using or something else? If you have no idea and no clue, take a screenshot of this information, go into Claude, go into ChatGPT and ask. It will help and provide that information to tell you what you need to put where. Okay. So then we're going to go to the host. So most of them will always have a host. So you need, this is the info. Okay, so copy and paste, it's the same info. And then we're passing along the API data that we had saved over there. Okay, so then Fantastic. We have what we need. Now we're going to test this because we need to make sure of what it looks like at the output. And then we're going to go ahead and get things figured out. So we're going to unlink this for the moment. And we are going to run this. Beautiful. We got what we wanted. And so as you can see, there's like a little bit of syntax here. Let's zoom in so you can see that. A little bit of syntax. Now, a lot of them won't be as nice as this, but there can be like a lot of this type of stuff happening because it's referencing subtitles, timestamps, or just like other metadata, language, whatever that you won't want. And so if you can find APIs in there that already are clean-ish, it'll just make the whole process easier, because then we do want to use a text parser to clean this info up. But rather than me trying to figure out or memorize all the things for regex, which is the name of the syntax language to communicate, here's what I want to parse this text for. There's also this thing called regex 101 you can access if you wanted to learn and dive into and then debug. I just go to the LLM and do it. So here, actually, let's even see what it would look like. Where was the output? Okay. Okay. We're going to say, you are an expert software engineer. I need a regex formula for getting rid of the transcript info in the following text that is a sample of the longer text. Please provide the formula. Now, sometimes this will work, sometimes you need to provide a larger sample set, but it's always good to say what you want. All right, so let's see if it comes back and provides a formula. Should be a pretty simple formula because, again, you don't have a bunch of stuff. If you have multiple lines, multiple brackets, it'll be a little bit more complex. All right. All right, so it simplifies. It always usually is an overachiever. So let's see if it does which one's better. So it gave us 2 examples. Sometimes it won't do that. Then it'll give you like a full explanation. So if you do want to learn, you can learn as you go. So if we go back over here, rather than running the operations, we could test it here. Okay, so it showed the error. So let's actually see if when we go over here, if that works, because for some reason it's doing the open and closed brackets a part of the thing. So let's undo this so it doesn't flow over. And let's put that in. There's the pattern. Okay, so we have the data, and you know what? We are gonna just get the output so we can run that individually. I always like to go here and make it a little bit easier. And copy. Okay, so when we run this, we will see what the output looks like. And note, you do have to run through a couple different iterations of what the syntax looks like. I actually had to go through a few times, and we'll see here is the beautiful output. But this was not what I originally had put in or asked with Claude. And so actually I was going between Claude and here and just testing out a few different iterations, because if you don't put exactly perfectly the syntax in as you see it, as the output is from here, then it won't understand it and will give you some other answer. This whole stuff is like very specific per what you put in, like to the letter. So just careful with that. But we got what we needed. We technically probably don't need this because it's clean enough, but then we're gonna send it into our OpenAI module. So what you're gonna need to do is set up OpenAI with the API. And this is basically ChatGPT's API platform on the developer area. So you're going to want to go to platform.openai.com. You're going to end up in the docs area. You're going to go to the playground. And then you're going to go to API keys, and you're going to create a new secret key. You're going to put it in. You're going to select which area you're going to do. And then once you have that key, copy that key, because once you close it, you don't get to access it again. Like I can't go in here and see what my secret key is. So just make sure to always copy and paste it somewhere so that you have it for reference. So you don't have to make a gazillion keys. But if for some reason you do lose it or you stop using it, it's always good to also clean that up as well. But they're easy to create, so not a big deal if that happens. It happens to the best of us all the time. Okay, once you've set up that connection, because here, just so you can see where you're going to be adding that in, you'll add in your OpenAI key and then your organization ID. So I'm not going to open mine specifically, so I don't have to go and change it later. But basically all you're going to do is log into the OpenAI account and then go to settings, and then you're going to see your org ID right there. So I won't go through that process just so I don't have to delete mine later, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so once you've set that up, once you've added that connection, great. You'll save it, and then you'll see something pop up, then you select it. Okay, so then we're going to do select method. So this I like to do chat completion. In other instances, in other connections, you can do assistance, or if you have a fine-tuned model, there's different things you can reference. Chat completion is the easiest as well as the cheapest of all the different select methods. And whether you're doing a chat completion, so there's different options here, or this is where you would select that. Message and assistant, transform text to structure. So there's a bunch of different things you can do to create a completion versus messaging and assistant. And assistant is when you create something that has been trained a little bit, you have some specific data and examples you've already inputted, and just like your recurring prompts over and over. So if you have custom GPTs and stuff. Here, this is just net new. It's not remembering, isn't trained on anything in particular. It's using basically the general model. So there's benefits and drawbacks for that. With messaging and assistant, it will cost a little bit more than a chat completion. So just note that if you're depending upon the size and number of operations you're going through and number of times you're running this. Okay, so then you're gonna select a model. Always do this because I have accidentally had it default to O1 and it ran up a massive bill because all of the different models cost a different amount of money. If you go to the platform pricing page, it'll show you all the different costs. But for now, what you need to do is just select, I'm doing GPT-3 Turbo for the moment. Okay, so actually I wanted to show you what it was about this. So you cannot format your text in here because basically what you're doing is you're copy and pasting it in. It's going to be thousands and thousands. Like I think I had copy and pasted, it was like 11 pages long. If you do it in here, you will get partial amount of the formatting. You will not get verbatim what you want because it's too much. There's, I think the context window is maybe around 2,000 to 4,000 words for putting things into your LLM, and it changes depending on if you're using Claude, ChatGPT, or any of the other ones, Gemini, Grok. So what you want to do is actually use this only for summarizing. There's a whole other video we will do about how do you actually get verbatim these large documents, because what you have to do is parse everything up and chunk that information into smaller bites so that the LLM can handle it, because right now you would be overloading that. So hypothetically, if you had a smaller amount of data and text, a great lazy way to do formatting, if you didn't want to go through the text parser when it gets all gobbledygook, but just note that when you have larger documents like 11 pages or more than, let's say, 3,000 to 4,000 words, you're gonna not get what you need. So I just wanted to let you know that this is the lazy way, the way you could do it for smaller amounts of information. Just takes some burden off of having to deal with rejects, because rejects is annoying, I agree. But I just wanted to let you know there is that drawback that you can't do it with a large transcript like what we're getting. So in this case, we do have to go through the rejects process, and then we are putting the full transcript into our Google Doc. All right, so for here, well, let's do the results. Okay, so we added a connection here. So you go through the same process, set up the connection, you sign in. It's pretty straightforward for Google, and then just name it something so you remember later, because otherwise they'll all be Google connections and you won't remember what is to what. Then you select your drop down and then you name it. So I just did TR at the beginning, so I know this is a transcript and not the newsletter. And I just put whatever syntax. You could just hard code it or reference the variable from the name and titles, which is nice, just creates a better organizational structure. Then we're getting the output from our text parser. So you can see a little preview here. It gives you, I won't show you the whole thing, but just gives you a sample. So we plop that in here because that's just going to paste it right over. And then we're going to choose our drive. and then specifically the location. So we'll just refresh this to make sure I didn't change any of the wording. All right, perfect. Okay, so this is where the full transcript is going to go. So we'll show that in a second, but let's just jump right into the summary and then copy and pasting the summary as well. So over here, again, we started off setting up that connection with the OpenAI platform via the API. Again, you're going to go through select chat completion method. And again, when you first add it in the module, probably do a chat completion versus using an assistant. Then we're going to select our model. So right now we're going to go 4.0 mini just to make it a little bit better than 3.5 turbo, but play around again. And then I do have a pretty long prompt here, so I'm not going to read through this whole thing to bore you all. And then again, just remember that when you create that new document, if you wanted to use a database such as Google Sheets, that's great. But again, it will overload the Google Sheet depending upon the size. And so you have to either parse that up into different cells, and Google Sheets can get heavy and slow. With Google Docs, if you create a new one, then you have it nicely organized and predefined. If you have a running document, that'll become really long. And then you also will have to be able to reference that data later, which again, you have to do some sprucing up so that you can easily reference each of those transcripts, which is not always as simple as, again, just creating a new document. So you might as well just do this. Okay, we have a nice long prompt, we have the reference data, and we are all set. And again, we just put in max tokens. Here we go. Okay, and then from there, we're gonna get the results of our chat completion over here. So this will be the summary. Here I noted the newsletter, did again the selection of the drive and the folder. And okay, so let's make this aligned again. So let's run through and see what happens, and let's pull over our drive just to show. Here, let me delete this so you know that this is net new since I had run it earlier just to test things. All right, so let's see what happens. Things are moving a little bit faster than they did before, so that's good. And remember, we just had one video that we were accessing and referencing. So again, we'll have to increase that to get all of them, and then it'll create a whole bunch of different documents and not just one. So if you want to do more, you would just, again, increase the limit. So let's see how it looks before we go through that process, but we can see, okay, did we get everything we needed? So where is data? Where are you? All right, here we know we got output we needed. Okay, so should have copy and paste in there. Then here, expand the result. Okay, there we go. We get a summary. All right, so then that should have been created over here. So let's go back over here. Here we go. Here's the transcript. All right, so we got the transcript. Now, our summary. Let's see if that, oh, it just took a second. Okay, so sometimes you just have to have patience. I know all of us are impatient. Okay, so here we go. I probably would iterate this a little bit more. I'd want to know maybe some more details. There's a lot of like step-by-step guides in here. We'll probably have to iterate the prompting just to get exactly what we want, but I would say like this is good for skimming versus watching a full video. And then again, if you want to adapt the voice or anything in here, like you can do all of that's possible. But this is at least the foundation for what you need to create your own personalized digest for all of those videos. You can even put in here the link so that it's easy to reference later on. So if you do want to click into the video. So again, this is just the world's your oyster when you can do all this stuff. It's pretty awesome. Yes, there's a little bit of a learning curve. Yes, there's some friction here, and there are always errors. So you just have to say, I have all of my wonderful AI co-pilots that can help you along the way, and you can do this. This is accessible to anybody. If you want me to build this for you, you want me to tweak this for you, just reach out to me. I am helping people figure out how to learn all this stuff and building a lot of stuff for people related to different automation. So really focused on growth tools, but feel free to also follow along on this journey, because I will be doing a lot more requests based on what people are asking on social media and just actually showing you how to build it. And then if you just don't have the time, since like most of you don't, I'm happy to do it for you. So feel free to reach out, Liz at automationcreators.com. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.